Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're joining us today. We have a conversation that indeed stretches across the world because we have 5 experts who are going to be talking about landing your business in their area. So one of the things that we talk about every day, probably spend every minute nearly of every day thinking about and worrying about, is how can our members grow their business to other regions. And so these experts are doing it every day. They're helping companies land all over the world. And our first speaker is Kirsty Wilkinson. She's the director at Asia Market Makers. And I actually was talking about Kirsty yesterday, I think it was, explaining that lo and behold, here's this member of ours in the US who's interested in getting an alcohol product into Japan, and the expert for that is in Melbourne, Australia. So who could ever imagine that would ever be the case? But lo and behold, Kirsty is that expert. She has had a full career involved with exporting products. She's been based in both in Melbourne and London. She's worked in the wine industry, and Kirsty, you're going to be talking a little bit about landing your business in Asia outside of China. So thank you for your time this morning in Melbourne.
Thank you, Doug. Well, thank you, Caesar and Doug, for this opportunity to talk to you about landing your business in Asia. You can go on to the next screen if you like, Caesar. I just thought I'd give you a bit of a background about myself before going on to the presentation. I've lived in Japan, Indonesia, London, and also numerous places around Australia. I was an exchange student to Japan during high school, which stemmed my interest in Japan. I then went on to complete a double degree at Monash University in Japanese and international trade. I've worked for a number of global companies across marketing, sales, events, supply chain, finance and project management in Melbourne and London across a range of industries. I was at Wine and Gourmet, which is a huge trade show in Tokyo held in April every year. And I was representing a Lebanese winery and identified there was a real need for someone to help businesses wanting to enter a Japanese market, but also other markets into Asia as well. Just thought I'd just go through briefly what I'm going to cover in this presentation. First, I'm going to go through the mistakes made when considering Asia. Each country is unique in itself, marketing strategies in Asia, selling tips for businesses who are new to the market, e-commerce platforms, and why should you consider Asia? Firstly, some of the mistakes that I hear time and time again are that businesses make the mistake of thinking that they do business the same as they do at home. All countries in Asia are the same, which each country is unique in its own right. They don't do their research, they cut corners, lack of preparation, refuse to adapt to local culture, and also they assume success will happen overnight, which clearly doesn't happen, especially in Asia. Each country is unique in its own right. No country in Asia is the same. Often subtle differences with many countries in Asia. Japan, which is a market I specialise in, is very different to many parts of Asia. Here is just some examples. For example, in India, people are very sophisticated and well-educated and there's a need to understand and respect the caste system. In Japan, long-term relationships and trust are paramount for success. Understanding of cultural values and business practices are also essential. When it comes to marketing strategies, one of the most important things is market research. So many businesses I've spoken to have not done their research, and this is why a lot of businesses fail, is that they haven't done their due diligence. One of the first things that's really good to do is to talk to experienced businesses, such as through the Chambers of Commerce, for example, in Japan, in Tokyo, the Australia New Zealand Chamber of Commerce in Japan. And I've got a lot of great contacts through that, and lots of very experienced businesses. Also, storytelling. Have a really good story about your business and your products or services. In Asia, and especially Japan, having a really strong story that's unique behind your business and products or services is crucial. Also, localize your products or services. Also, optimize online presence through relevant local channels such as Twitter, Facebook, and in Japan, Line is the biggest social media platform. And also invest in a hire local talent. Don't try and do it all on your own. Now, I just thought I'd go through some selling tips for new businesses to Asia. One of the really good ways of leveraging sales is developing strategic partner collaborations. And there's quite a few businesses who've done that quite successfully. Also, building relationships through referrals. In Asia, networking and recommendations are really, really important. Utilize e-commerce platforms. Also leverage through social media platforms, localize products, and trade shows are actually a really great way of I guess, as a start in the market. Often it might be attending a number of times before you can gain that trust, and you might have a distributor that might be interested in selling your products. In terms of e-commerce platforms, there's quite a lot of different ones, but some of the ones I thought that I'd mention are Rakuten, which is a Japanese platform, but it's widely used across Asia. Amazon, it's obviously a global platform, but used a lot in Asia. AliExpress, which is used outside China. And Lazada, which is owned by Alibaba, is mainly the Southeast Asia. But there's a huge amount of different ones. Now, why should you consider Asia? There's relative ease of doing business, the affordability, the tax system and the tax rates are much lower and reasonable and compared to some other countries. Thriving economies. And also, it's about a long-term commitment, not just something that will be for a short amount of time. And if you'd like to know more about Asia Market Makers, feel free to email me on that email address. I'm also on the WhatsApp message for Global Chamber as well. So feel free to reach out. So thank you for listening and for your time.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. If you're a member and you're interested in getting connected into that network, please let us know. We're happy to do that. Right now, WhatsApp is really only kind of the global advisors and executive directors, but we'd love to connect up with you when you want to do that. Our next speaker is calling in from the United States. Indira Jeffrey happens to be here, but she's got one foot in Mexico and one foot in the US very often, and her expertise is around business on both sides. So she's helping companies from Mexico into the US and US companies going into Mexico. She's the founder of iGlobal Business Consulting. She's also very integral in our activities in the state of Guanajuato. Her brother is actually the executive director for Global Chamber in Guanajuato. So Indira, Thanks for all you do with the Global Chamber. You do some amazing work yourself, and we're really pleased that you'll be sharing some ideas and tips today for doing business in Latin America.
Yes, thank you for having me, Doug and Cesar, for all the support we have for iGlobal and for the Global Chamber Guanajuato. Well, just to start, and thank you also for the introduction. Yes, I am the founder for iGlobal Business Consulting, and I am based in Chandler, Arizona, but also I do business in Mexico for those companies that want to expand or want to export their products and services from the US to Mexico and Latin America, and vice versa, from Mexico, Latin America to the US. The presentation, I would like to start with this question: why to invest in Mexico and Latin America? As everybody knows, 2018 was a very interesting year for Latin America, and now going on 2019 regarding the markets and the financial topics that we have around those 20 countries is looking very promising for long-term investors. And also, well, some of the banks and institutions, they have significant exposure to Latin America. And analysts and investors, they also have a very good attentive to external and domestic factors that they think they will influence the performance of the Latin American bonds, equities, and foreign exchange markets. In saying that, we have two major campaigns for president, and those two representatives, first Alejandro López Obrador from Mexico won the elections, and also López Obrador, he won the elections in Mexico, and in Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro. Those very strong candidates, and well, they seem like they won the population candidacy, and they are left. They have left interest in both countries. We can go to the next slide. Okay. Some of the main topics I would like to talk right now is about the population, some of those countries in Latin America they have, and why. If you are doing your business in the United States, you may consider that you need to start focusing in the Latino market. And this is because in the US, there are 50 million population of Latinos and people that speak Spanish. So that would be a good idea to start in, focusing in this market of men, women, and children. Why? Because they are big influencers into their own countries in Mexico and Latin America. For example, Brazil, the population in 2019 was 212,392,770 in Brazil. And in Mexico, it was a little bit more than the 50% of that population, 132,328 in 035 population. Can we go to the next one? The main import sources in Latin America were from the United States, from the Europe Union, China, Canada, and Asia. This is very important to see that the United States have a big influence into the imports of the Latin American countries. And also, I would like to add that Hispanic market is the fastest growing group in the United States, as some of you may know. The base of the United States economy is the innovation, but also I would like to add that some of the countries in Mexico and Latin America, they are keeping up with all the innovations that are coming from the United States. Some of those countries, they have big infrastructure, and they are having very good incomes and revenues from their own business internally. So that means that they have capacity to spend on items. Okay. For example, also, in 2018, the remittances in US dollars to some of these countries grew very importantly, and that also means that they have income to spend. So, for example, the main countries that had the main remittance in those countries were, well, the US dollars, but also some other countries start appearing as having a growth, like Colombia, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, and Guatemala. Some of the tips that I can give you to land your business in Mexico and Latin America, first of all, is the language. It's very important that you know the language of, in this case, Spanish. A lot of people in those countries, they speak English, but it's more comfortable for them to speak in their own language. Also, the culture. Each country has their own culture, and it is important that if you go to Peru, you know a little bit of the culture and what are the customs they have. Also, it's very important to know the government requirements for imports. For example, in Mexico, they have a COFEPRIS, and for all those products that are human consumption, they have to be first approved by the COFEPRIS. And like, for example, for this specific area, time is key, because sometimes it can take from 3 to 6 months permit. Brazil, and some of the imports that they have mostly are, they have a big power on infrastructure and transportation. And also I can add that chemical products, refined petroleum, and plastics and rubbers, they import a lot on those goods. And in Mexico, I can add that they are big importers of excuse me, vehicles, mineral products, plastics, and chemical products. Finally, I would like to add that it's very important that if you would like to export to the, Latin American countries, you should attend trade shows and trade missions from your country to those countries, because that is a very good way to know a little bit more of the culture, the business culture, that is very important. And I appreciate all your attention. Here is my information in case you have any questions. Thank you.
Oh, excellent, Indira. Thank you. Thank you very much for that information. We do have some questions, and we're going to save them until after our next speaker. Abdel in Shanghai is going to be our next speaker. We're going to shift there, and then we'll pick up some questions, and then we'll do the final two presentations. And so, Indira, thank you. Kirsty, thank you. And then our next speaker, Abdel. Abdel, you're calling in also from the morning. It's the afternoon and evening here in North America. You're the founder and director of Eastheimer Training and Consulting. And we know Abdel as a global advisor for Global Chamber, and what he's able to do for our members and for others who are entering into China is, like the two ladies, just a great service for people and we highly recommend you connecting to any of these folks, and especially Abdel coming into China because of both of your experience and your connections. So we appreciate what you do on a daily basis, Abdel, and thank you today for sharing just a little bit of a glimpse of some of the secrets of doing business in China.
Do you guys hear me? Is it clear?
Very good. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doug, and thank you everyone for logging in. I'm calling you from Shanghai. As Doug said, our business, our company helps businesses and people grow in China, foreign businesses and people grow in China, and also helps foreign Chinese companies and Chinese people grow overseas in overseas markets. At the same time, I lecture in few universities and business schools. And my main topic is, of course, doing business in China with China. And that's what I'm going to be talking about a little bit today. I think Kirsty's and Indira mentioned a few key points that also apply to China. For example, when Kirsty said about each country is unique in Asia, I would go further and say that even within China, each province is unique, each city is unique. She also mentioned referrals, and that's another characteristic of Chinese market, is that people rarely believe in cold call. If you call someone just randomly and say, hey, I understand you have this need, let's see how we can work it out, they will probably hang up. So referrals are very powerful in a country that's composed of 1.4 billion people. She also mentioned social media, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit later on briefly. But the first question that I tell businesses and tell people, why China? Why did you decide to come to China? Can you answer this question to yourself? Are you coming in proactive mode or in reactive mode? Are you here because you're looking for profits, you're looking for economies of scale, you're having some unique products, you have some technological advantage, in other words, are you coming proactively, or are you reacting to something? Do you have any competitive pressure that you're working on? Do you have any overproduction? You have any saturated domestic markets? Do you have decline in domestic revenue? So the first thing to ask yourself is, why China? Why am I coming to China? And understand if you're landing in as a proactive investor or seller, or as a reactive one. Then once you answer this question, move to the next level, which is analyzing your organization readiness and assess if there is a market product fit. Have you consolidated your position back home, or do you have a product that's going to fit the markets? Do you understand the consumer trends in China, which are very fast changing trends? Do you understand where do you start? Do you enter from first tier cities, second tier cities, or third tier city? Do you understand who should help you? What are the distribution channels, and so forth and so on? So first you need to understand your organizational readiness, and then after that assess if there is a market and product fit. And if you are, and once you do that, part of this would come the resources. What kind of resources I'm going to allocate to coming into China? You need to understand, for example, that you need some social media strategy and digital strategy in China, because in China, if you don't have local social media strategy and digital strategy, you're perceived as probably a scammer or someone's going to cheat them. And if you don't have resources to allocate to your social media strategy, no matter what you're selling, no matter how you're selling it, then you stand to lose as compared to your competitors. And the social media in China is another sphere. It's not a world. If I mention some apps you probably never heard of, like Meituan. Meituan application has 400 million users, which is in China, 800 million people use internet on their phone, and half of them, they use this Meituan app. I'm sure you never heard about an app called Toutiao. Toutiao is a news aggregator, and it has 120 million daily users. WeChat, you're probably familiar with it. WeChat, which is a combination of WhatsApp and Facebook. And by the way, if you are dealing with local Chinese and trying to talk on WhatsApp, a lot of times pictures are not going to go through and phones are not going to go through because WhatsApp is blocked or restricted. in China. So you need to understand all these things and make sure that you have the right resources to overcome these hurdles that you're gonna face. You're gonna also understand if you're in say cosmetics or food and beverage and some specific industries, Chinese consumers would react positively when you engage KOL, key opinion leaders. And these key opinion leaders, of course, they have their own channels on apps like Douyin and WeChat and Weibo, and these are the ones who can help you position your brand in the markets and enter the Chinese market. Another aspect that I want to emphasize on is the legal part. If in China, contracts are short, they're very small, but they're enforced. And translating your English contracts into Chinese contracts would not work, into Chinese language would not work. It needs to be drafted from Chinese lawyer in Chinese and call for the application of Chinese law and litigation to take place in a Chinese court if you want to make sure to enforce it. And we see this very often when foreign company comes into China and builds a joint venture with a local partner, and then problems arise and they show up in front of a judge with two contracts. They're similar, one in English, one in Chinese. The judge will put aside the English one and read the Chinese one. And very often the Chinese contract tells you that in case of litigation, the Chinese version supersedes. This is very common in joint ventures. Joint ventures don't have a very good history of working in China. It's another thing you should consider, which is what kind of structure should I put in place when I enter the Chinese market? Most companies, when it makes sense, enter into what we call WFOE, wholly foreign owned trade enterprise, instead of joint venture. We have a saying here in China to characterize joint ventures that goes same bed, different dreams. And that's an example of saying that you're probably going to get together with someone having some ideas, but then in reality is going to be something else. And whenever I say getting in partnership or with someone, because partnerships are very important, I am yet to find one brand or one foreign company that succeeded in China by itself without engaging with a local partner. You need to qualify them, of course. There are some third-party agencies you can hire, and they carry some basic due diligence for $300, $500 to at least make sure that the legal entity exists. It doesn't have any pending legal suits. And, but for me, as far as I'm concerned, it took me at least 3 years to find my right partner. It's daily work. It's very hard, but once you find one, you can, all the doors open. It's not a legal requirement to find a local partner, but from common sense, business common sense, it definitely helps, especially in these times when you have things like the trade war between the United States and China. You need someone locally who's going to help you navigate, just tell you how to talk to people, how to react whenever someone brings up the tariffs and whenever someone brings up controversial issues. Someone's going to help you talk to local governments to get support in this area or and that area. Last but not least, it's always good to seek opportunities and enter new markets, but it's always wiser to think of your exit strategy. What's going to happen if, let's say, like what happened last week? The presidents of the United States said we increase tariffs to 25%. And if all your market is in the United States and your brand has been building in the United States, then you're probably out of business. And if you decide to shut down a factory of 200 and 300 people, it's going to be a very tough task. I mean, because if you're in small city, local governments will tell you, look, you've been here for 3 years. We've been giving you free land. We've been giving you low taxes, subsidies. And now you're going to put 200, 300 people out of work, give us our money back. How do you react to that? How do you navigate that? And there are many cases today of American companies leaving China, going to the next China, trying to go to Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Philippines, and to some extent Indonesia and Turkey. But those are companies that do not just advertise it all over the newspaper and say, hey, hello people, we're leaving, because you can come in, but to leave, you better have a strong exit strategy. And most of the time you need the support of a local lawyer who's going to help you in this exit strategy. So these are some of the key points that come to my mind, and I'll leave it up to you guys if you have any questions.
That sounds good. So we'll take your questions now, and then we'll have actually two more speakers. They're both recorded. Phil Disant, who'll be talking about Europe, and we also have Habib, Amine, Benabdallah, who's of Morocco, and he'll be talking about Africa. So let's take the questions now. One is related to it's a specific question for you, Indira, from Stephanie Qualls. She's asking, do you anticipate additional risk with the new Mexico regime? You know, for instance, some sort of a nationalization scheme. Is there some additional investment risk given that new regime, and in particular, maybe getting profits out of the country or related issues that might impact business investment?
Yes, well, thank you for the question, Stephanie. I think it is very well known that the President López Obrador, he is very extreme left, and some people, they even call him in the beginning as a dictator, and they thought that Mexico was going to be the mirror of Venezuela. I think, because I am very in touch with all sorts of people in Mexico, most of that is fake news. And Mexico is a country of 132 million people. Each of the states, they have their own governance. If you would like to, let's say, export to Querétaro, the state of Querétaro, or the state of Guanajuato, they are willing to do and help the importers or exporters as much as they can, because this is the culture that is already in Mexico, a culture of openness and a culture of doing business. If there is a nationalization, I don't think so, because everything has to go through several layers of the government. And fortunately, there are a lot of people that they don't believe in nationalization in Mexico. And the last question, risk of inability to get profits out of the country. Well, people in the beginning of this administration, they start freaking out, and a lot of people, they start trying to get, their money out of the country. But I think now, after 3 months of, 5 months of the actual administration, everything is settled down. It was like a big shake in the beginning, like always, when it's a big change of the government. But I think, and I believe that Mexico is still a very good country to invest.
Okay, great. In a related area, I guess we need to take the question about China and what's happening in China right now, and what might be expected on the business side. Abdel, you kind of alluded to it in terms of potentially shut down factories there, and there just definitely seems to be, this is a significant moment in history that we need to look at. What are you seeing on the ground there? And it's probably very hard to predict what's going to happen next, but what's your sensibility?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a lot of things that are happening. We're not aware of them. If someone wants to leave a country, they want to keep it low, and either the company itself or the government here. It's never a good idea to advertise that businesses are leaving, but this is compensated by another wave or commerce from foreign investors coming into China to invest in priority sectors that have very, very strong support from the government, which those are sectors that align with the Made in China 2025, or sectors that align with the Belt and Road Initiative, all sectors that align with the 5 years plan. And if you look up for any of these three terms on Wikipedia or online, you would understand what are the priorities of this of the governments in this year and the coming years. So if you're a foreign company probably coming into China to invest in robotics, to invest in new materials, to invest in medical devices, to invest in any areas that go around 5G, driverless cars, energy vehicles. These are all sectors that are noticing a high growth of number of new entrants coming from mostly Europe, Australia, Northern America, trying to benefit from the subsidies that are offered by Chinese governments. In some areas, they can give you, I was last week in the city of Ningbo, and there is a company that hired 3 Italian people to help them with their precision machines, and the government matched up their salary. So for every person that this company hired, the local government paid them an extra $100,000 per person, just because those people were highly qualified and were bringing in expertise, and then the companies is expanding in this area. So yeah, there's some areas of industry that are going to be leaving to the next China, and there's some new areas that are emerging, and that's very normal in this specific juncture of Chinese economy, where it's moving from developing to developed economy to move higher in the value chain and get rid of those polluting industries. If you're making widgets and toys and textile, and you're welcome to China, but do you have real value added that you're going to be welcomed? Not as much as someone who's coming here, like Tesla, who came in last year, and was the first time in the history of car making in China that foreign car maker can operate by themselves without local government-owned, state-owned company partnership. So that's my take, but let's see. It's very unpredictable how things change. Just yeah, you probably followed the news yesterday. Huawei was banned from the United States, and let's see what's going to be the next shot that China is going to fire.
Yep, I agreed. Kirsty, for you, and really all 3 of you, relative to the successes that you've been part of in your regions, you at least a couple of you mentioned about language and partners and some other issues related to success. Could you share with us maybe some recent successes that you've had, Kirsty, in Asia, and what are some of the characteristics that are there? Certainly Tesla is a great product, right? But here they are ignoring the idea of having a local partner. It's too early to determine whether they're going to be successful or not, more than likely. But in the meantime, Kirsty, what's your sensibility around some of the key things that exporters or people who are setting up in Asia, outside of China in particular, need to be thinking about?
Thanks for the question. I think one of the things that is really important is having a growth mindset, because often, for example, when I was working with a Lebanese winery, they thought, and this comes back to when I was talking about some of the mistakes that companies make, is that they were trying to ignore advice I'd given to them about Japanese culture, Japanese business practices, and because they'd had success in other markets such as the US and UK and Europe, that they could have success quickly in the Japanese market, even though I had educated them that success in Japan, it can take 2 or 3 years to find the right distributor and have success in Japan. I think some of the key things that to consider, but those that are really successful are they have a growth mindset. They're willing to be flexible and change. For example, in Japan, labeling is very, very strict, and everything has to be in Japanese, and all food and beverage items, for example, have to be tested before you can even look at exporting to Japan. So I think certainly it's around language and culture. Even though a lot of, for example, in Japan, a lot of Japanese people speak English, there's a lot that don't. And they really value it if you can speak in Japanese as well. And I'm fluent in Japanese, and I always involve interpreters and translators that are native, because there are things that perhaps I may not pick up, and vice versa in meetings. So that's absolutely crucial. But I think, and as an example, at the moment I'm working with a winery, and he has a really interesting background. His mother was Italian and his father Croatian, and because he's also lived in a number of different countries, he's open to change and look at different ways of doing things. And he's really, really keen to learn about Japanese market. And one of the reasons he's so keen about it is the long-term commitment that Japanese, Japanese customers take. So I think a lot of it comes around to the mindset, having a cultural awareness, but also be willing to change. And that comes back to localization and localizing your products. There's no point trying to sell a product that try and sell it the way that you sell it here. I mean, there's lots of subtle things, especially in places like Japan. There's a lot of subtle things. Certain colors can mean different things. So, and also there's 4 distinct seasons, and a lot of the product packaging is around that as well. So, I think one of the biggest things is, cultural sensitivity, and be willing to learn. And, what I've actually started doing as part of my packages, including modules on basic Japanese business language, as well as the cultural aspects as well, because that's where I feel a lot of businesses are missing that. So, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll shift gears a little bit now, and a different area about investment and money. This is a question from Rusan Rahman, and it's Ni Hao Abdel. So he's directing the initial question to Abdel, but this is really more of a general question in terms of accessing capital for investments. And so those of us in Global Chamber, we saw an opportunity come in from India, where there's money available for certain types of investment. We know that there's Mexican investment, looking to leave the country and coming into other countries. And in the case of China, there's certainly a lot of money there to potentially tap into. And so what Rusan's asking is pretty much, how do you do it? So Chinese companies are all around globally. Do you also provide guidance and support in the regard of those Chinese companies? And then going back to the Chinese investment, how should a company think about tapping into what might be available? And Rusan said, appreciating in advance.
Yeah, it would be good if we know a little bit more about the nature of the project. Generally, if it's projects within the Belt and Road Initiative, which is 75 countries, if it's within the Belt and Road Initiative, the funding is already locked from the governments. They come in with their funding from China Construction Bank or China, or any one of those entities from Beijing that finance those large infrastructure projects along the Belt and Road Initiative. If he's talking about, for example, coming to China, bring in some idea that is new, innovative, and looking for funding, you're going to find different governments, not very less on the coastal part, but more mainly on the central part of China, provide very good incentives that could be around giving free office, tax exemptions, tax holidays. They can be founding the project, part of the project in terms of seed round or pre-seed round. But we need to know a little bit more, because there's a lot of money going on, but to understand the channels, we need to understand the nature of the projects. What do you exactly have in mind? So what location of which location, which country, what is the idea mainly? So is it a project that are you going to bring something already that's you already proved and implemented in your country with the idea of accelerating that product or service in China? Or are you going just with the idea how much funding you're going to come in, because the government will be, of course, if you're going to get Chinese funding to invest and to build something in China or to open a company in China, they would ask you to about your commitment to China. So if you tell us a little bit more about what you have in mind, we'll be able to figure this one out. But yeah, money is there. Most of the time money goes to Chinese. It makes sense. Chinese companies get financing to go build projects around the world. But if you're a foreigner and want to benefit from that money, it's not as easy as if you're Chinese. But of course, there are channels to do that. And if you tell us more, we can see.
Okay, so is the area of investment, if someone is looking for investment or wishes to invest, is that an area that you're willing to help and that you do help with? And then what about the Chinese companies that are around the world? Do you also do consulting and support for them as well?
Yeah, if it's a company that's willing to come into China and set up some sort of operation in China and accelerate in China, absolutely. Okay. If it's a company that is located in some other country and they're looking into raising funds from Chinese investors, that might take a little bit more time, and it depends. I would say maybe depends on what is the destination country, what is the purpose. We have to keep in mind that 2 years ago there was a crackdown, and now it's a crackdown on money leaving China. So now it's almost impossible for anyone here to get money out unless you have very strong justification. Myself, if I want to send my money, my earned salary here, my revenue, my profit to back home, I need to go to the bank with the full tax documentation from the tax bureau, proofs of either salary, some invoices, contracts. Same thing for Chinese company. Any Chinese company that want to get any money, any sort of money outside, even small, let's say $1 million to $1 million, there's so many restrictions to get that out, because the facility of getting money out was abused a few years ago, where the government was encouraging companies to go overseas and buy high-tech companies, robotic companies, but realized that Chinese investor would go and buy a company not because they have research and development and because they have patents and because they have brand, but they buy it because it has real estate. And the idea was just to get money out of China, and then you just go to China to get some assets overseas, and so your money is safe when it touches Australia or United States or New Zealand or Canada, or those favorite destination for Chinese investors. So getting money out could be challenging, but again, goes back to what kind of project and what kind of location.
Okay, let's do a lightning round here with these two questions, because we're going to need to wrap up. But okay. One is regarding your opinion about the tariffs. So do you have an opinion about what's happening with the tariffs and what might be the next step? And then could you say a few words about intellectual property, and do you feel like there are better protections now, or do you feel optimistic that there'll be more in the future?
Okay, I think the tariffs are just the tip of the iceberg, and this is more of a economic Cold War that's not gonna stop there. It's not just about the tariffs. It's about the slowing of Chinese economy and slowing the expansion of Chinese economy. And this is gonna be a very long trade war. And it's gonna develop into economic war, in Cold War in general. And I don't see this anytime slowing down. And whether there is an agreement between China and the United States regarding tariffs, whether there's an agreement or not, I think the war is gonna keep going in other areas, if not on tariffs, on other segments. That's for sure. So we should brace for more to come, more surprises and more retaliations from both sides. Regarding the IP, China is not a good country when it comes to intellectual property protection, but most of people who lose their IP to China, they do so not because China is terrible at protecting IP, but because themselves, they were terrible at protecting their own IP. China is the first to file. If you come here to China and you operate for 5 years, let's say you're KFC, you operate here for 5 years, and you didn't file to register your trademark, anybody can come and register and they still win it and they own it. There are many cases, like you can look up online at Michael Jordan for his shoes, that he had big litigation here in China because, well, he didn't file his IP. And you need to know that you can come in and file your IP for shoes, and I take the same, or trademark, sorry, for shoes, and I take the same brand and I can file it for spaghetti and for jeans and for laptops. That means I own it in those specific categories. So whenever people file their trademarks and they want to protect their IP, they look at different categories. One that was good at doing that was Starbucks, for example. I'm talking a little bit more from manufacturing perspective, but it would be better if I hear a little bit more about what kind of IP we're talking about. I know, because if you're manufacturing your product in China just for export, it does not minimize the need to protect your IP, because someone here in China can register your trademark even though you are not selling in China. But by registering your trademark in China, they have the power to stop your goods at the border and prevent them from leaving to China. And then you'll have to come back to them and buy your own trademark from them. So there are many areas when I think IP, trademark, I think more from manufacturing side. But if you have more precise question, I can probably guide you. You can send me an email.
Okay. Oh, that sounds good. So I think in general, if you have, you're watching and you have questions about China, we know who to go to. If you've got questions about Latin America, obviously Indira, you should contact. And then Kirsty is familiar with all of Asia, including China, but she also has mainly specialized outside of China, in particular Japan, as one of her real expert countries. Really appreciate that. What I think we're going to do now is shift to presentation on Europe. So Phil Disant is the co-founder of Export Gateways. And so what I think we're going to do here is do two recordings, because those of us here in the US, it's late in the day, and those of you in Asia, it's early in the day. Guess who gets stuck in the middle of the night? It's our friends in Europe. So they were not in Africa, so they were not able to join us live. And so both Phil and Habib will be joining us by video. So if you hang on for about another 10, 15 minutes, we'll be through with both of those. Go ahead, Phil.
Hello, Chamber members. Thank you for being here. I'm Phil Disant with the Export Gateways, and I'm based today in Toulouse, France. I would like to talk about a few topics today, which are related to the European markets, and especially marketing strategies that are being used in Europe, and some business approaches that a company can use actually for that purpose. So, as has been the case in the US over the past years, companies based in the European Union gradually choosing their marketing strategy using content marketing strategy. This is actually a major change compared to traditional linear marketing by defining the process and then securing the right resources, such as all the digital marketing resources available, which are social platforms, inbound marketing, SEO optimization, for example. And this is for producing consistent stream of content focused on buyer needs across all phases of the buying cycle. Nowadays, content marketing addresses both B2B and B2C types of businesses. Considering that both customers and businesses have an active presence on online channels, B2B companies must also lay more emphasis on enhancing their marketing strategies. This is built with four main pillars. You have to ensure your content is constantly aligned with your brand message and values. Also ensure your content enhances your credibility. Ensure your content helps you stand out from the competition, and ensure your content delivers against your objectives. So these are the main marketing strategies that are being used in Europe. So this is the content marketing. Now, what business approaches a company which would like to enter the EU market for the first time should pursue? I'd say, first of all, that when you prepare to enter a European market, you need to understand marketing practices of the European country you're targeting. Well, this is not only for a European Union country, this is basically for any international market, but let's talk about this specifically. And then you need to understand your customer base and learn about any country-specific laws that may apply to your business. So first of all, you need to research your market, because that's a key factor to be successful in your international expansion project. Making sure that customers understand the benefits of your products or services is essential. This is even more important when operating in another country, as you will have to consider other factors like, let's point out, for example, cultural differences, such as ideals that appeal in a certain European country may not work elsewhere in Europe. You have the language barriers. Getting the right tone and message across is fundamental. The third point is customer trust. If you're a foreign country, you may have to work harder to build trust with customers, which can be logical somewhat. And finally, legal implications. That's a key point as well. Advertising and marketing can be heavily restricted in some countries with potential fines. And there are country-specific laws in the EU that you should always check before launching any campaigns. I'm going to take one example, which is, for example, in France. We know that the French law requires that all marketing materials are provided in French or with a French translation. So that's one of the examples we can give, but there are many of them. Now, what commercial approaches we can use today in the European Union? So you have some more traditional, which are work with an importer and distributor. You can also work with a local agent. And something which is today developing a lot is distance selling. And this is for many business today, small businesses in particular. And distance selling is a good option when expanding to another country, especially within the European Union. Well, basically, you supply your goods and services from one European Union to the other, where the customer and supplier don't have to meet or cannot meet with each other. Distance selling is covered by specific EU regulations that also cover your marketing strategy. It can include press advertising, online and email marketing, for example. You have other options, such as, especially for B2C e-commerce, with selling platforms such as Amazon, eBay, Etsy, and so on. So this is a solution that requires most of the time a heavy control of your inbound and outbound logistics, your sales stream, and also a management of customer satisfaction. So this is really heavy for especially small businesses. This is why you have other options, such as what Export Gateways offer, for example, which is an ideal customized integrated solution in the European Union, as well as in North America, to the small businesses based overseas. So with outsourced export department and direct sales through an e-commerce business platform or a selling platform. I'm going to take an example. You're a small business based in South America, and you seek to expand your business in the EU and North America. Then we act as your export department and provide a complete logistics, digital marketing and commercial solution, commercializing your products through our local online platform. So that's another option that you have. If you need more information about this, I would be very happy to help you with this. So you can contact me directly. So that's basically in a few topics what can be today happening in Europe when you want to enter these markets, especially talking about the European Union. So I want to thank you very much for your attention, and hopefully very soon we're going to see and talk together. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. Philippe calling in from Toulouse, France, and he was recorded. And while we queue up Habib from Morocco as our last speaker, we've got about another 6 or 7 minutes, so sorry we're going to go a little bit over. I did want to mention about Phil's background. His areas of expertise have included innovative building materials, decoration, information technologies, cosmetics, wine, and spirits. So we've got another wine and spirit person to contact relative to the European market. I think Habib is ready.
Thank you, Doug. Hi, everybody. As Doug introduced me, my name is Habib. I'm speaking to you from Casablanca, Morocco. And I'll share with you a little bit of my experiences in Africa. Actually, I work at a company called Vivo Energy, and we're present in 24 African countries. So I have a little bit of experience. I actually do business development for our retail fuel sites. And actually, we try to add up some convenience retailing activities to these fuel sites. So allow me to talk to you a little bit about making it in Africa, about the business dynamics of growing in Africa. And so I'll take you straight to the second slide, which is basically how the economy, how the shifting of the frontier is going towards Africa now. And as you probably already know, that Africa is showing the highest growth in disposable income over the forecast period to 2030. Actually, 11 of the 20th fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa. And actually, consumer demand is actually growing as well, and driven by two factors. As shown in my slide, which are the greater number of consumers coming in and the growing class. The population obviously is growing, and you can see that graph, and it's growing more than any other region in the world. And the population is actually benefiting from this growth in GDP, and many industries are expanding and growing. So if I go to the following slide, and this is, I think, what's mostly interesting for you is how to do business in Africa. You know, people think of Africa as a single country. No, you know, it's 54 different countries, diverse in every way possible, in cultural, in language sometimes, in even, I guess, from one region to the other in the same countries, you find diversity. It's just like everywhere else. So thinking that one can target them the same way is wrong. You have to adapt to each country's specifics. I'll just give you an example. You see that picture, that lifestyle image that I'm showing in this slide. So basically, when we try to develop communication around our shops in Africa, we said, okay, well, let's do a photo shoot in Côte d'Ivoire, and all the images that we take in Côte d'Ivoire, we'll put them in all the shops around the world. Around Africa. You know, they're all obviously, the pictures we took in Abidjan, they're from African ladies, and we would think that if you put the pictures of African ladies, say in Kenya, they'll associate to them being, look, it's a local brand, it's African, even as you can see the colors are somewhat African. So we wanted to have the African DNA. But when we did that, consumers, actually before even we get to customers, we tested the images locally, and they said, no, this is not a woman from Kenya. This is a woman from Côte d'Ivoire. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, every country has specificities. Even the images, they don't want to be associated with a different country. It's not because she's an African lady that you can say, okay, we're all African and we're all the same, and you can have the same message for all Africa. No, they didn't like that. So we had to actually do a photo shoot in every African country. So they feel that they're well represented in terms of imagery as well. So that was, I guess, something interesting for you to know, because obviously you cannot target the whole continent in the same way. The biggest challenge is around logistics. It's the biggest challenge that we faced, a lot of companies face. When you try to go, when you bring your merchandise to Africa, just getting it out of the port can be a challenge. Even I think in terms of navigating through the administrative things, the authorizations, it's quite hard. So my advice is you need to find yourself a local partner, or at least a consultant, because it's very, sometimes, for example, I give you an example of KFC. We work with them and we try to import chicken. They told us, yes, you can do that, no problem. We've done all the work to actually ship it, to bring it from Brazil. We only found out that when it reached the port, that there was a document that was signed like 15 years ago that didn't allow for it, that didn't allow us to import that chicken. And nobody told us. So navigating through all this, you need to know exactly the laws, etc. And so sometimes tough and not share with everybody. It's not like found in a ubiquitous way. So better be partnering, or at least consulting with some local people around it. Scarcity of skills is an issue, really. When you try to find, say, for example, in our case with KFC, we tried to find some store managers that had some experience in food, in quick service restaurants. We had that issue. So, but overall, there is a scarcity of talents, of skills, really. Not talents. I mean, a lot of them that can afford going to study abroad, they do that, and few of them return back. The ones that are left, are bright people, but sometimes they lack, expertise in a specific field. Of course, of the political instability of these countries. So, I guess my advice here is be knowledgeable about the differences from one country to the other, and try to use some local help as much as you can. I'll move to the next slide. And actually, I was asked to talk a little bit about e-commerce, given its importance. So, e-commerce in Africa is increasingly growing and becoming important. Actually, 16% of the world's internet users will come from Africa by 2030. There is actually some companies that have developed in this field. We have the equivalent of Amazon in Africa. It's called Jumia, and they were recently traded in the US stock market. And they're actually, I guess, available in more than 20 countries in Africa, and they have the leading position there. But they're also having the struggles with the supply chain, with the payment, with also moving people platform. But the e-commerce industry is growing, and the number of internet users in Africa is the highest growing number of all continents. So it's something to keep in mind, and it's a trend that will facilitate doing business in Africa quite a bit, because with having, say, an Amazon type for Africa, you can approach, you can have a multiple country approach, with the central I guess player, which is Jumia, for example, for instance. And obviously some barriers of supply chain, of payment, etc. have been, I guess they've paid their school fees around these barriers. So I guess short on time, I'll go directly to the fastest growing industries in Africa. And agriculture still is king. Agriculture in Africa actually still employs about 70% of the population, according to Forbes, obviously directly and indirectly. So it's still a sector that's key and king in the continent. And incidentally, food production is one of the most or fastest growing sectors because the agri-business opportunities are being pursued by more and more companies. And that helps also avoid importing from other countries, which actually the cost of importing is increasing in Africa. So many investors find in food production a way to target a demand that's not being met. Renewable energy. Actually, in Africa, it's in full swing, renewable energy, especially solar. Take a country like Morocco. So Morocco, they're aiming to have 48% of their energy production, energy consumption from solar and from actually both solar and from wind. By 2022, so in I think 3 or 4 years' time, 48% of their consumption will be from renewable energy. And actually in Morocco, they have the biggest solar farm in the world now, according to CNN, and actually it's in the south of Morocco, obviously because of the availability of the sun, but many countries have taken that step to move to renewable energy, and there is plenty of business opportunities around it. Obviously, because of the availability of these energies, these cheap energies. Now, oil and gas and mining in Africa is still a big sector, and it remains one of the strongest one. Actually, what has improved is that countries are also creating ecosystems around the mines. So in terms of logistics, in terms of creating a city around it. So when you have population around it, you have I guess people you can employ. It's not too far from the cities. Before to reach a mine, you'd have to drive on off-road for 700 miles or something like that. Well, no longer these issues are happening, and ecosystems are being created around mining and oil and gas. Infrastructure, now it's the Chinese and mainly the Chinese, a little bit of the Turkish companies that are taking advantage of this huge opportunities around it, because actually infrastructure in every country in Africa, there is a need for infrastructure improvements. In every country, a big chunk of government money is going towards infrastructure. So if you guys are active in that field, you'll have many opportunities in Africa. Financial services, I think we've touched on it earlier, due to the improvements in mobile payments and in phone use and internet, etc. Things are improving in that field. So let's technology and communications. Tourism, what's growing actually is the experience tourism, mainly, for example, creating circuits, safaris, customized trips, which resort to that experience in tourism rather than I guess, an overall investment in infrastructure in tourism, but more of I guess, customized experience. Due to the short time, I will stop here. If you have any question, I'm sure the panel will help answer them, and I'm obviously available whether on WhatsApp or by email to answer any of your questions. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Doug, and to the panel members, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Habib. That was a recording. It went a little bit longer than I thought it might, but thank you for holding on, all of you. What we're going to do now is do a quick wrap up, 1 minute from each one of the live presenters. I do want to mention about Habib. You could tell that he's been involved with a lot of different businesses. He's been involved with rent-to-own chain. He's worked with Shell in a variety of roles and geographies, first in Morocco and then around not just Africa, but also in Europe. He has done some reimagining and positioning projects for Shell lubricants, and he's just, as you can tell, a great resource, as all our speakers are. So let's first start with Kirsty. We'll go to Melbourne, Australia, and Kirsty, could you wrap up kind of what we should walk away thinking of relative to Asia, or anything you'd like to chat with?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk today about doing business in Asia. I think one of the most key things is developing relationships and considering it as a long-term commitment. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email, or I'm also on WhatsApp. So thank you for your time today.
Very good. Thank you, Kirsty. Indira, how about you?
Hi, well, thank you for this opportunity, Doug. And the only I can tell is to all the audience is to really look for experts and take advantage of all the experts we have here at the Global Chamber. It is very important that if you are trying to go to another country, you find someone from that country that can give you a very true advice. And thank you for having me.
No question about it. And so, and then our last speaker then will be, the last minute will be Abdel, and poor KFC. I mean, we heard not only about their intellectual property misfits there in China, but now Habib told us a little bit about a shipping problem they had with chickens from Brazil. So how would you like to wrap up, Abdel?
KFC today is doing very well. Is the first fast food, foreign fast food that came into China, and so today it's one of the best success stories that we can talk about, and actually I have in one of my seminars in here. So I would like to end with a Chinese saying that says, "There is no fish in clear waters. It's only when it's troubled times and there are challenges that you can stand to benefit a lot." And if you know specifically for China how to find the right data and how to find the right partners, you stand to benefit greatly from one of the two largest economies in the world and 1.4 billion people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all of you for sharing these tips. If you have any trouble contacting anyone here for additional conversations, or if you didn't get your question answered, or you've got a business venture you'd like to chat with, certainly contact them directly, but send an email to info@globalchamber.org, and we'll make sure that you're connected. Coming up, we do weekly or twice a week Globinars, and two of the really exciting ones coming up, May 29th, about Industry 4.0 and what it could mean for your business, and so things you should be thinking about. And also May 30th, the next day, we'll be talking about what's hot with NAFTA, called now USMCA, and we've got the world's renowned expert on it, Dan Ujo of Dickinson Wright, and he's bringing his immigration expert to that session, and we're bringing Mexico-US border expert, Luis Ramirez, who's on Twitter on the border. He is, I think, the premier expert about what's going on at the border. So that's going to be a great event on the 30th. It's a Globinar. And then finally, on June 5th, we'll be talking about what's hot. So we'll be kind of circling the world like we did today, different perspectives on a variety of markets in technology and cannabis and all sorts of opportunities that are hot right now. So thank you for participating. Thank you, speakers. Thank you for hanging on, and have a great day and evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.